How you doing? This is Coach DeCarlo. Recently, we had a discussion within the group. The discussion was this: what's possible? Somebody had asked the question, is it possible for someone who had an amputated limb for that limb to regrow? And of course, many of us would just say that anything is possible. But what we have to do is look at the constraints of the physical body, as Neville had often spoke of. In the body, there's so many things that we can do. Now, what I'm not saying is that it's totally impossible for a limb to grow back. But the question is, are we at a place currently in society that we're open to such a thing as that? Yeah, we would think about it and we would talk about it. We'd say, oh, yeah, anything is possible. Sometimes things like this happen over a course of times, sometimes hundreds, thousands of years for a species to get to a place where it's able to do something that's outside of its perceived as its divine makeup, as it were. So over a course of time, if we held the belief that as children are born, they could regrow a limb and regrow a limb, pretty soon that would not be questioned for future generations. But for us, because we don't hold to that belief, we'll find it almost impossible to regrow a limb. Now, what I'm not saying is that it's impossible. What I'm saying is right now, at this moment, it's improbable. And so the difference is, even though it may be possible through some course of time, right now, because of our predominant belief systems, we don't hold that as a reality. Now, we do know that there's species within our ecosystem that can, in fact, regrow themselves. You know, a lizard, you cut his tail off, that tail will regrow. There's certain species that you can cut them in half, and when they're divided, they just grow two individual bodies. So we do know that it's possible, but we do not hold the belief system that we're able to regrow a limb. Now, what science has allowed us to do through stem cell research and other research is we're able to regrow those limbs in a controlled environment. We're also able to take a limb that's been amputated and take someone else's limb, let's say a person who's brain dead. We can take that brain dead person and take their limb, cut it off, and then apply it to somebody who's living. The problem is the body has to be able to adapt that new limb and not reject it. So many times when those types of surgeries take place, the biggest thing, whether it be a facial surgery or a limb being of an amputee, or even when you're talking about hearts, livers, kidneys, and so forth, the problem is sometimes the body will reject that new item that's been added to it, to the body. So what we're not saying is that it's impossible for a person to regrow a limb. No more than 2,000 years ago, it was possible for somebody to make a car. Now, everything that they needed was already in the earth realm, but they did not have the know-how to make that car or computer. Most of the things that you see around you, if you look around your room, wherever it is that you're watching this talk, all the items that are around you at one point in time were impossibilities. They could not be created because the technology at that time would not have allowed it. Likewise with regrowing a limb, we haven't got to a place of consciousness that we even believe that we can regrow a limb. We would say it in theory, oh yeah, anything's possible. But for somebody to actively see themselves really regrowing that limb, matter of fact, if a limb started to regrow itself, what would happen is we would probably cut it off because we would think it was some type of tumor or some type of growth because no one has ever regrown a limb. So we would think it's some type of cancer, growth or something, and we would go about going to a doctor. The doctor said, I've never seen anything like this. And what he or she would do was probably amputate the new limb that was coming on anyway, because of course, nobody's ever seen someone regrow a limb. But in the future, with research, study, and even with science, it may be programmed in a child's DNA that they're able to literally regrow limbs. So what's seemingly impossible today may be possible 100 years from now, 50 years from now. We don't know what technology is going to bring forth. Many of the things that we're experiencing right now today, even 50 years ago, was an impossibility. So as we advance further, as we grow in consciousness, we will probably become more active in seeing, as it were, limbs regrown. And even if the limb was actually regrown in a controlled environment and then placed on the amputee, that's a possibility. So when we say that anything is possible, the anything that's possible has to abide in the laws of this realm of reality. So we know that there's a law called gravity. And if you got 1,000 people and they jump off the Empire State Building, now everybody jumping off the Empire State Building can believe that they can fly. But with the law of gravity, it says that that's just not so with some type of flying apparatus. Without that apparatus, you're going to fall to the ground from the Empire State Building, and you're going to be like a bug on a windshield of a car, and you'll be splat. So we have to look at the anything possible within the confines of this thing we call reality. And even in our dream state, we have the limitations of our own belief systems. So if we're like Neo in the Matrix in our dream state and we believe that we can fly, then of course in that state we can fly. Now, speaking of flight, 200, 300 years ago, we had people like Leonardo da Vinci, and he drew a flying apparatus. And it basically was how birds fly, but it was something that like what we would see as a glider today. So, but in his time, people thought that he was mad to even think that men could fly. In his time, things like heart surgery, brain surgery was something that was inconceivable. Matter of fact, we thought that those items belong solely to God and men should not have any dealings with those items of the body. So surgery was not seen as something possible. But now the truth of the matter is it was always possible, but successful surgery at that time was not probable. So likewise with many of the things that we will so quickly in theory say anything is possible, it may be possible, but where we're at in this stage of society, many things that may be possible in the future are not probable now. And we're coming so fast now with technology, things are just coming so fast that we don't even know where we're going to be 10 years from now, 5 years from now. So the technology that may or may not exist today may exist tomorrow so that we can, as it were, regrow a limb. In the Bible, there's a phrase and it says that gods looked down on men as men were building this Tower of Babel. And he says that as he looked down on the Tower of Babel, that he realized when men had come together, speaking men and women coming together, that there was nothing impossible for them. So much so they were building a tower to heaven. And he said, let us go down and confound the language. So the language was confused so that we were not speaking of one tongue, one dialect. So of course, we scattered throughout the earth, and that's why we have the different nations and so forth. When we as a people come together and we look at what's possible and we put our minds to what's possible, then we open up the doors to all possibilities. And again, when I say possibilities, I'm saying in the realm of this realm of reality. What's possible, who knows the limits of what's possible in this realm of reality? No one knows. Because like I said, even 10, 15 years ago, tools that we're using today didn't exist. People didn't even see some of these tools as possible. And like I said, if you look around in your current environment where you're at right now, everything that you see that's been created, even 200, 300 years ago, they did not exist, nor were they even possibilities. Something as simple as the lamp 200 years ago didn't exist. Matter of fact, many people thought that Edison was insane, and they always thought that candles and kerosene lamps would be the wave of the future. But Edison saw something more. He saw the filament of the electric light bulb. Creators, whatever it is that you set your mind on, and you begin finding out ways to make that thing happen, you begin to make what's seemingly impossible today a possibility tomorrow. Now, I've been told in my group that somebody said, that's why, I really don't like these types of groups because they give people false hope. Everything that we have around us, technology and so forth, started off as a false hope. Just because we can't manifest something today doesn't mean that it won't be a reality tomorrow. So when we say that anything is possible, it's said in scripture, whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, he can achieve. Now, of course, that's also quoted by Napoleon Hill. It doesn't make it any less true. Jesus says, be it unto you according to your faith or your belief. So creators, realize that if you get something in your spirit, say that you want a loving relationship, say you want better health, say that you want more money, just because you have the concept, it's become possible for you. Some of the things that you may come up with, like I think about Walt Disney, for example, he didn't see the finish of the Disney Epcot Center and Disneyland and so forth. He didn't see the end of that physically, but somebody told him on his deathbed, I'm just so sad for you because you're not going to be able to see the finished product of Disneyland. He said, man, are you crazy? He said, I've seen it, for, the last 20, 30 years, I've seen the building in my mind. And that's how it works. When we begin seeing something possible in our mind's eye, that thing, even if it doesn't exist today, is well on its way to becoming a possibility because you as a creator, you're giving it life. So be mindful of what it is that you're giving your attention to and that what you're giving life, because as it's been stated, whatever men will set her mind on, it's just a matter of time before that thing is manifested within our realities. It goes back to, Jesus talking to the Pharisees. He says, many of you say that, if you are with a woman and you're lusting after, that's the sin. The act of being with the woman is the sin. He says, but I say to you that if you lust after a person in your heart, you've already committed the sin. Now, why do I bring that up? This is not about sin. It's about whatever you devise in your heart, it's already on its way to being manifested in a reality until you change your conception of that thing. So creators, be mindful of what it is that you're giving your attention to and make sure that it's lovely and of good report. Most of the reports that we're hearing lately are not good reports, and we're continuously bombarding our system with these negative reports. And we wonder why we're not experiencing the more abundant life. Then I have to inquire with you, creators, what is it that you're giving your attention to? And realize that whatever it is that you're giving your attention to is actually being manufactured in your world until you shift your attention to something better than the best you know. This is Coach DeCarlo saying have a great and abundant day.